Welcome to Jubilee 2025 Pilgrims of Hope, a podcast from the Catholic Courier celebrating this milestone year in the Universal Church with stories of faith and hope from around the Diocese of Rochester. Here's your host, Gina Capellazzi, digital content producer at the Catholic Courier.
Youth and young adults were invited to Rome for the international celebration of the Jubilee of Young People at the end of July. There are a growing number of young adult ministries in the Diocese of Rochester. Later, I'll be joined by two young adults who are active in one of those ministries in the Diocese of Rochester. But first, I'm joined by Mark Capellazzi, Project Coordinator for Youth and Young Adult Ministry at the Diocese of Rochester. It's worth noting that Mark is my brother, and so I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to interview you to talk about what you do, but here we go. First, can you describe for me what your role is as the Youth and Young Adult Minister or Project Coordinator for Youth and Young Adult Ministry?
Sure. So that's kind of evolved over my years here. I began in the position back in June of 2018. And at the time, I was hired to help assist with diocesan youth and young adult ministry projects. There was a diocesan coordinator of youth and young adult ministry at the time. And so there were two of us that were dedicated to youth and young adult ministry initiatives for the diocese. With some retirements and some staff changes, I became the sole person for youth and young adult ministry for the diocese. And for a long time, our office really did a lot of direct service programs. So we offered youth and young adult ministry programs at the diocesan level. And after a lot of reflection and discernment, we felt that it was more advantageous to support youth and young adult ministry at the parish level and really focus our time in making sure that those that are serving youth and young adults on the parish level have the tools that they need to be successful.
So we hear this word young adults, but what is a young adult in the eyes of the church?
Yeah, so it's a pretty big age range. The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, or as we like to call them, the USCCB, defines young adults as someone that is between the ages of 18 to 39, sometimes you hear 40. So that is a huge age range. And certainly you have young adults that are in various stages of life in that age range.
Yeah, how do you reach out to young adults? Because, as you said, it's 18 to 39. They're in different stages of their life. How does the diocese or how do young adult ministries in the diocese reach out to make sure they're working with those who are, 18, just out of high school, going into college, to singles, people, to young married couples with children? How do you reach all of those groups? Because, again, it's such a big group there.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have a separate office that helps to oversee and support our college campus ministries. And of course, college campus ministry or college students are a part of that young adult age range. And so they certainly focus on helping to cultivate faith among college students. We have young adult ministries that focus a little bit more on the younger young adults. We've seen a development of ministries that maybe focus more on those that are in their late 20s and into their 30s. What we really try to do is provide resources that speak to the different stages of life. So we might, in some of the things that we provide as far as professional development for young adult ministers, we might share some best practices for helping to support young parents who maybe just started a family. So it's really always keeping in mind those different stages of young adulthood and making sure that the young adult ministers are well formed in those areas.
No, it just may seem to me, maybe when I'm just like looking through bulletins or just kind of, visiting different churches, that there seems to be a growing number of young adult ministries that are starting or have been around for a bit. Why are we seeing, and maybe it's been going on for years but I'm just seeing it now more recently, a hunger for young adult ministries and in groups within, parishes and within the diocese?
I think there are several reasons for that. I think, again, our office's focus from doing a lot of programming and opportunities at the diocesan level to really supporting the efforts at the parish level has certainly played a role in the growth of young adult ministry. When you stop and think about it, young adult ministry or any aspect of our faith is relational. And you're more likely to form stronger relationships and connections at a regional or a parish level than you are at like a diocesan theology on tap or some other type of young adult program at a diocesan level. So I think just that support of parish leaders who are trying to cultivate young adult ministry has certainly helped to grow those efforts. I think the other piece of this is it's being talked about a lot more. The late Pope Francis had put out a papal encyclical called Christus Vivit, which talked a lot about the faith of youth and young adults. And as a follow-up to that document, there was a new pastoral framework put out by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops on youth and young adult ministry. So at the national level, as the global church has been discussing, it's really been brought to the forefront.
Can you talk about some of our young adult ministries that we have that are active right now, here in Monroe County, but I know we have them in the Southern Tier and the Finger Lakes as well?
Yeah, it's super amazing to see young adults themselves take the initiative in starting young adult ministries or young adult communities. We have seen a lot of social gatherings and pilgrimages to local religious sites in our areas. They're really creating great community in their ministries and doing some really interesting things. Like one of our young adult ministries has started a YouTube channel, and they're going to be sharing different topics of faith on their YouTube channel. So our young adult ministries are very creative, and I think one of the things that impresses me is that there's been a good amount of consistency, which is sometimes a challenge with young adult ministries as young adults go from being single to being married and then maybe starting a family. There's sometimes a situation where a vibrant young adult ministry kind of dissipates. And so the fact that we have young adult ministries that continue to thrive even as young adults change in the stage of their life, I think is very edifying for sure.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about some of the challenges in young adult ministries, having myself been in a young adult ministry that has kind of dissipated. What are the challenges for young adult ministries, and what have you found in your role as people are starting these ministries? What works and what isn't working?
Yeah, I think young adults are often transient, right? They go where they feel called. They may have a change in jobs or move out of the area, or maybe are involved in several different things. And so maybe their participation in opportunities that are being offered by young adult ministries might be inconsistent. So I think one of the things that is essential is creating those connections and reaching out via, social media or through text message or just checking in to see how they are doing, even if, there might be a gap in between their participation in whatever opportunities the young adult ministry is providing. So that certainly is very, very important, is that relationship building, like I said it a minute ago. I think collaboration is very key. We've seen parishes that were trying to start young adult ministries as a single parish struggle a little bit because these parish young adult ministries at times were doing some of the same things. And so the fact that they really thought that it was important to collaborate with nearby young adult ministries has really helped. And research shows that young adults are not wedded to a specific parish like maybe older adults are. So the fact that we have a lot of young adult ministry that's not based at one single parish has made it more approachable and attractive to young adults. Because young adults have a lot going on, whether, starting careers, figuring out careers, just graduating from college, starting families, they need that support. And so I think it's very important to have adults, whether that be adult volunteers or parish ministers, that are mentoring and supporting the young adults that are really leading these efforts. Sometimes the challenge can be that mentorship and empowering young adults ends up taking over the ministry. And young adults need, this is true, I think, of people beyond those in, the young adult age range, they need to be invested in what is happening. And if someone is doing everything for the young adult leaders that are trying to grow the ministry, I don't think there's a lot of growth. So that certainly can sometimes be a challenge.
For young adults looking to get involved in a ministry, whether it be at their parish or regionally, how do they go about seeking these opportunities?
Well, I've learned a great deal in this role about WhatsApp. A lot of our young adult ministries utilize WhatsApp or have Facebook or Instagram pages and group text messages. So certainly there's a lot of communication that happens on those platforms. We, as a diocese, have a monthly young adult e-newsletter that goes out that not only provides information about young adult ministry opportunities through our various parish young adult or regional young adult ministries, but also some quick tips or best practices for young adult ministry, or maybe a conference that is being hosted for young adult ministry. So that's one way. We have a young adult Facebook and Instagram account for the diocese that we provide updates and information on. We also have a section of our office's website that's dedicated to young adult ministry. And yeah, I mean, it can just be as simple as reaching out to their local parish. And if their parish doesn't have any type of offerings for young adults, they can certainly connect them with other parishes or other young adult communities.
Okay, well, you've shared a lot of information here, and I want to thank you, Mark, for joining me.
You're welcome.
Stay tuned, because after this short break, I'll be joined by two young adults who are active with a successful young adult ministry in the Diocese of Rochester. Get the news in your inbox when you sign up for Catholic Courier e-newsletters. Stay up to date on Jubilee year 2025 and all the other news and events from the Diocese of Rochester with Monday e-news, Thursday weekend, and Saturday reflection emails. To sign up, email us at latestnews@catholiccourier.com. Welcome back. I'm now joined by two young adults who are involved in those young adult ministries that Mark spoke of. Tyler Davis, Pastoral Associate for Youth and Young Adults at Southeast Rochester Catholic Community, and Colleen Young, Youth Ministry Assistant at St. John of Rochester. Tyler and Colleen are both on the leadership team for Converge Young Adult Ministry. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to our discussion about young adult ministry and specifically Converge. But first, let me ask you about yourselves a little bit. How did you guys get involved in church ministry and then even young adult ministry?
Yeah, so for myself, I got involved with young adult ministry in the wake of the pandemic. I had been raised Protestant and I converted to Catholicism in 2020, and I needed a job like most people. And there was a church out in Greece that was hiring a part-time social media assistant. And then in my final interview, the old couple hours of help here got me in to work with youth ministry. Eventually, finances dictated that I get involved more, and I ended up finding a full-time position, which is where I've been now for almost 5 years. Young adult ministry, however, kind of was a little bit in a rebuilding phase in the wake of the pandemic, and I got involved more specifically out of my job, but in the necessity that we were walking into in the wake of the pandemic with everyone feeling so isolated. So that's how I got involved in young adult ministry.
What about you, Colleen?
So I started as a youth minister at the parish that I had grown up at and was working there. And Tyler came to try and invite my church for young adults to join Converge. And so he invited me, and my first event was a Christmas party, and I've been there ever since.
So, as young adults, what do you think are some of the needs for Catholic young adults?
Yeah, I would say on a human level, I think all young adults, regardless of their religious background, are, especially in today's day and age, facing a crisis of loneliness. And I would say right off the get, looking for a space that is somewhere they can meet other people, including those whom they share values with and those who challenge what they already believe. So I would say the loneliness is one aspect, but I would add, I think they're also looking for people who will listen to them and that will be with them during these tough times. And I think there's a crisis of looking for truth, and looking for authenticity is really the key word I would use.
I think a lot of people are looking for that connection. In the social media world, you have friends, but they're not truly your friends, but through face-to-face conversations, and we do have a large group presence on a WhatsApp that people are able to share their highs and their lows. They're able to find true connection with one another, which is often hard in the secular world.
Mm-hmm. We'll talk about Converge. That is the young adult ministry that you guys are both a part of. How did this get started?
Yeah, so in the summer of 2022, I would say it came from a lot of failure. So Converge was formed when some lovely people, Lou and Michelle Fioravanti, out of Peace of Christ Parish out in Irondequoit, St. Kateri, thank you. They reached out and they said, hey, our young adult ministry is suffering in the wake of the pandemic. We'd like to get it off the ground, and would anybody would like to work with us? And so myself, and at the time Emily Kwiatkowski, who was at Peace of Christ Parish, reached out, and we were the only ones who reached out. And this idea formed to originally have a joint calendar where we would share events. That calendar eventually turned into an opportunity to collaborate further, ending up with a new name and this idea that we had not seen before, but came up with of a regional approach. This idea of a critical mass of young adults makes it so that instead of if you have an event and there's only 4 people in the group and 2 people can't come, now the event's lame. If you have a certain critical mass, then even if some people can't come, it provides a space for people to be able to step away for a period and then come back, and the group still exists. So that's how Converge kind of formed. So we're approaching 3 years now.
Where did the name come from?
Your brother partnered with Lou Fioravanti.
Okay.
We were tossing ideas around at a Leaf and Bean, and the idea of working together and converging, it felt very Catholic. It felt very universal. And it felt very fitting that we were coming from different areas converging for ministry.
Yeah. Now, it is this regional approach, and prior, maybe some young adult groups were parish-based. So are you seeing this being more successful than, groups just being started at a parish? Because as Mark says earlier in this podcast, that young adults don't particularly settle at one parish. They tend to go different places. So do you see doing something like a regional, like Converge, being more successful than maybe these one young adult group at a parish here and there?
I have personally, yes. I think it's also dependent on the diocese. I would say in the Diocese of Rochester, while we do have a lot of parishes that are geographically proximate compared to maybe other dioceses that are more spread out, or even other counties, I would say a regional format has had far better reach with these young adults that are, again, as Mark was pointing out, jumping from parish to parish, or just coming back to the faith and not even sure where to land. We're identifying that a lot of our young adults are typically choosing their mass time based on whatever their schedule is dictating for that given weekend. But yeah, that would be, do you have anything to add, Colleen?
I think having a regional, we are able to draw a much larger crowd. So as he was talking about the critical mass, it's going to be very difficult for a singular parish to have as many individuals. So if 2 or 3 people are missing because their schedule doesn't allow it, that's really felt. We do notice when people aren't there, but everyone knows that it's okay if they miss an event here and there because there's always going to be another event. Just wait a week and there's another one. So I think it is helpful, the fact that we do have such a large group that we can pull from in order to have a successful event with plenty of people.
It also makes it more attractive when you're trying to evangelize. A lot of the people that might be disassociated with the parishes are one of our key demographics we're trying to reach. It's Paul VI talked about the idea of the main vocation of the church is evangelization, and reaching out to those lost, especially to those who perhaps were confirmed or got First Communion in our own parishes but haven't been associated. It's been really beautiful to watch some people through the group encounter the church anew.
Okay. Talk about these events that you have, because you're doing events all the time. I know a lot of the events that you're doing because you're sending them to me to publicize on the Catholic Courier. But for people who don't know, what kind of events does Converge do on a monthly basis?
So we have our big trips, and we typically do those during our nicer weather months, though we do go to Buffalo when it tends to always be snowing.
That's Buffalo.
Yeah, that's just Buffalo. So we'll have trips. We have a lot of faith and fun combined events. So whether it's you're doing adoration and going bowling, whether you're having a prayer night and going to have ice cream afterwards. So we try to combine faith and fun together because that attracts people, because they're coming for the fun, but they're like, oh yeah, I'll do the faith in addition. And we've had a lot of people come and say that they haven't done confession since they were in second grade. But they're like, well, I wanted to see this bowling, so I did adoration and confession in addition to it. We also have a variety of small groups. We have a men's group and a women's group. We have Bible studies that we've tried. We've had small groups that look at the next week's readings. And Tyler's going to be starting one that is going to look at the catechism and why do we believe what we believe. And we also have more social events, specifically around like Christmas time. We have a Founding Father cookout for July 4th. So
One of my failed puns.
So we have a variety of events, and so we have something for everybody.
And part of that comes from, that was a fairly unique approach we tried, which was instead of just having each parish out of that cluster would hold one event a month, we started realizing the young adults were looking for a degree of consistency. I always used to joke that perhaps some of the failure of previous young adult ministry attempts across anywhere in the country would be that you needed to know where the blood moon rises on the second Tuesday in a church basement, know the secret password to get downstairs to a bunch of metal folding chairs. You know, it was, you had to know somebody. Whereas what we try and do is we've maximized both the frequency of our events. So we typically average 1 to 2 events a week at least, as well as we rotate our events. That's really been the biggest thing for us. Rotating our events so that we don't have a standard meeting night, while it might be confusing to new people, does provide people who have variable schedules, which is one of the hallmarks of being young adult, is that variability that's provided them a space to still participate.
And you're seeing young adults coming from all over the diocese, right? It's not just those 3 parishes that started Converge, correct?
2 weeks ago, we had our biggest event we've ever had with 70 young adults. Yes. And when we did that event, we had people from Houghton who had driven from Houghton, and we had a group from Corning who drove from Corning. We get them from an hour and a half. And that's the thing that I think a lot of young adult ministers and parish leaders might not realize, is the degree of the hunger that young adults are often having. And when you are lonely, when you're looking for community, when you're looking for a potential spouse, when you're looking for just a friend, you'll drive longer distances. And with the advent of the vehicles, while it is great to have a base out of a home parish, it's really helpful to be able to connect with others. But I do think it's worth pointing out, one of the things we've had people say to us before, and I don't know if it'll be a future question, is people will say, well, how do I stay engaged? Does this encourage people to stay engaged in their own parish? And that has been a huge thing for us. We always work with each person individually to make sure they find a home parish, and Converge does not go to the same parish. So we don't just grab young adults and then shove them into one parish. We probably have 40, 50 parishes represented across all over New York State that people go to who are regular attenders or just variable attenders.
Wow, that's really good. And it's good that, our friends down in the Southern Tier and Finger Lakes feel comfortable to just, come to events. Young adults, and I had Mark define, in the church is 18 to 39.
Yeah, it's a little broad.
And it's so broad. How do you reach out to that group where you have 18-year-olds who are, graduating high school, starting college? You've got in there, the 20-somethings who have just graduated college, who are figuring out their careers. And then you have young couples who are starting families. How do you reach out to everyone and make sure everyone feels like they're included?
So we surprisingly actually all get along pretty well. Like you'll see someone who's in their 30s talking to someone who is a freshman in college. There is definitely some differences as people go through different stages of life. We have many singles. We have individuals who are dating and thinking towards marriage. We have engaged couples and we have married couples. We actually do have a few members who they are married and have kids. We don't see them as often, but they know that they're always invited back. And so we might see them at some of our bigger, more social events. And so it's really just going back to that focus of we're all Catholic, we're all growing together, we're going through this journey. And you're able to lean on each other. And a lot of times some of the younger members might ask advice from the older ones of hey, does anyone have any advice on how to get car insurance? That has come up of
yesterday.
It's something that, there's a group of people that I trust who can answer that question. So it can go secular. It could be, does anyone know confession time during the weekday? So it's a great community that everyone feels comfortable to ask for help.
I would add too, I think the definition of young adult strictly by age is not always the most helpful. I think more often than not, of course, you have to have a bottom floor of 18. But I would say that people come and go from that group at variable times. And I would say the key way I understand young adults would be whether they have settled, if you will. So those who you might have someone who's in their mid-30s and is still kind of trying to figure out what they want to do with their life in terms of job and stuff. And that makes them have a very variable, or I don't know what the word would be, but a very ever-changing life. And so unlike those who might have kids in a house, they're going to be in a different degree of settling in their life. They've kind of found a home. And that's generally when we notice people find and identify a home parish. But young adults, the classic idea that, young adults are from 18 to 24, and then after that, they just figure it out, or, what have you. One of the things we've tried to do is we created Elevate. We helped Elevate get off the ground, which was a group for those who were 30s plus, because we were identifying there was a fairly big gap between those who were 18 and those who were 30. Those who grew up with smartphones, the 18-year-olds are still teaching me new words, and I'm only a couple years out. But then I've got 30-somethings who will talk to me, and we'll talk about nostalgic millennial things. And so it's totally dependent, but I would say those who have maybe settled a little more and those who haven't, that's how we typically differentiate the groups.
Okay. I was going to ask about Elevate because that kind of came off of Converge, but there's some other groups that are kind of taking the approach that Converge did. Trinitas, that's kind of focusing a little bit on the west side. Can you talk about some of these groups that maybe are taking your example and kind of spreading out through other parts of the diocese?
Yeah, I would say right off the get, we were clear from day one that we do not intend to ever have a monopoly. We might be regional, but there's a limit to what we can do. And I would definitely quote the scriptures when they say the harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few. There are so many young adults out there. Every day we gain new young adults in Converge. At least once a week, we're gaining somebody new into the ministry. And when that happens, I'm always astonished that I always think, we got to be running out soon. There's got to be a limit. But then I'll visit a parish church and I'll identify 6 or 7 new young adults that I still haven't seen, whether at my own parish, at a new parish. And I think if you see the news too, they'll talk about the idea that young adults are coming back to the faith in new ways and in astonishing rates. And we've tried to reach those people, but actually on election day this last year, to avoid the politics, your brother Mark and I sat down with a group of people interested in the diocese to discuss what young adult ministry could look like, and just kind of have a referendum on what is young adult ministry, the status of it in the diocese. And we got people from Gates, we got people from Hilton and all them, and a lot of groups came, including Penfield and others, and they're all kind of exploring and identifying that this is a need. But until this kind of regional format came about, there was this kind of, there'd be young adult ministries that would start, and then the leader gets busy with life, and then it kind of fizzles out. So one of the things we've tried to do, and that we've encouraged people to do, that we did at that election meeting, was we talked about creating a regional format and having a multifaceted leadership team. So we have 7 co-leaders in Converge. So Colleen and I are 2 of 7. And that means that when one leader isn't available, the meetings and the events can still happen, and it makes it so that the load isn't carried by any one person at any time.
Yeah, I was going to say that being a part of a young adult ministry, you get the, person that starts it, and then, life gets busy and then moves on. So it's good to see that there's a team of you guys doing it, so that it can, once, if life gets busy for the both of you and you need to step away, it can continue to move on. You've talked about a lot of the successes, and maybe you've mentioned a little bit of the challenges, but what have been some of the challenges for you guys with Converge at all?
Well, I'd call some of them are good problems, and we'll talk about those first. So good problems are when we plan an event and more people show up than we ever could have expected. That has been maybe our biggest, most common challenge, has been when people don't RSVP, because that's the one thing I'll tell anyone who watches this podcast is don't expect RSVPs from young adults. We found out that making people like messages in a WhatsApp was far better, but other than that, we're always surprised. We tend to start getting estimates based on past history. But I would say that's the first. That'd be like a good problem. Another good problem, if you will, is the again, in our highly partisan and kind of divided world today, we're getting people who come to Converge who, haven't been to Mass in a very long time, sitting next to people who go to like a Latin Mass every week. And so you're getting a huge spread of theological background and those who's had variable levels of catechesis. So navigating those interpersonal things has been huge. And again, in a world of a lot of online, especially in the wake of COVID, reacclimating people to what is it like to interact in a social setting and how to talk to someone of the opposite gender. Like how do you have a normal conversation? So, but I'm sure Colleen has ideas too.
Part of it with the RSVPs is sometimes like, oh, we don't have enough chairs at this facility because this parish center doesn't have the required equipment. And so, all right, next year we should probably do it at a different location. One of the examples of that is our Friendsgiving, which is our Thanksgiving meal. Trying to have enough seating for everybody can be difficult when 67 people want to come and you're like, okay, how are we going to fit them? So that's a problem for this upcoming year, as we have grown so much as a group that it's like, we're going to have to find a larger boat for all of our fish.
Yeah.
What sort of feedback have you heard from people who have been involved in Converge? What are some of those stories that you've heard that said, from them saying, Converge has really helped me on my faith journey? What kind of things have you heard from people?
Well, I would say we do surveys a lot, and that's been helpful. We typically do one once every 6 months. And those surveys gave us some really valuable feedback. At the beginning, one of those feedbacks was there wasn't a lot of women in the leadership. And so we started adding more women to the leadership, and now the men are very outnumbered. But it's been a great help. And honestly, I can't even imagine where the group would be right now without people like Colleen. I would say some of the feedback that's been really meaningful that I really appreciate has been, like Colleen already hinted at earlier, I've seen a few times now when we did our anonymous surveys where people would say, I hadn't been to confession since I was a little kid, and this made me do it for the first time, and I felt like I actually was safe to do so. One of my favorites that I've ever had was when someone said that the first time they came to a Converge event, they almost cried because they had never felt so welcomed. We've also gotten feedback. We've gotten a range of feedback, including that I finally have Catholic friends. I finally have people who I can identify who have shared values as me in this crazy world that we live in. But they range. I mean, generally what we get is a positive thumbs up. This has been a good experience. And typically word of mouth is normally where we see the most feedback. We just get more people, and that's why we keep growing.
Mm-hmm. And how has Converge helped you guys in your own faith journeys?
You want me to go first? Okay. So Converge has definitely widened my scope of like what being Catholic can be. I had been at my own home parish since I was 5, and it was like this was being Catholic. But then meeting people who go to Latin Mass, people who are good at going to confession every single week, and like so just meeting how different people live their Catholic life and taking little bits from here and there to be like, you know what, this can grow me as a Catholic and bring me farther on my journey.
I would say it's also, I really think, especially in the Jubilee year, it's made me far more evangelical. It's made me far more interested in reaching out to the lost. I think when, especially as a convert, there's a temptation in my own life when I first converted to be a little more isolationist, to, you know, I have the fullness of the truth in the Catholic faith and what am I going to do with it? But when I actually became Catholic and started working in church ministry, but especially through Converge, you know, learning that the goodness of God is meant to be shared, and that we have this unique opportunity to reach out to the lost. And that's been like so exciting for me, to watch these people enter the church who came in to Converge because a friend recommended, and they knew that they were welcome, even if they were Protestant, to come to a Catholic group. Because not all of our events are, you know, slamming Catholicism down their throats, but like they could actually come, make friends, and participate in a social. That was kind of the hook, if you will. And then consistent friendship, people that they can ask questions to. We currently have 2 people in our CIA that we know are coming in for this coming year. We had 2 people enter last year, on top of another 3 before. So it's every year we're seeing development and growth, and I expect we'll see more, and we hope we do.
Well, how does someone who is lost get involved in Converge?
Well, one of the things that was really helpful for us was, I don't know if everybody knows this, but church websites are typically horrible. And church websites are never developed or updated well. And so one of the things we really invested hard in was we really invested our time and energy and people's donations. We had some of our young adults donate to make it happen, to create a like proper, well-designed website. And so having an accessible website as a common landing page was really helpful for us. We also meet new people all the time through Instagram and through Facebook, Instagram being our biggest at the moment. But I would say it's about 50-50 between our Instagram and our website. But the biggest, of course, is word of mouth, is how we're gaining new people. Someone has a good experience and they invite their cousin, they invite their nephew, they invite their friend from school. Someone has a random conversation with them about, especially in the wake of Pope Leo, the Pope was elected. Tell me about the Pope. Starts a conversation. I go to this group, by the way. I think you'd like it. As long as we can continue to create a positive atmosphere for new people and those who are already coming, we continue to draw new folks.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining me today, learning more about Converge and your involvement in Converge. I really appreciate it, and I wish Converge continued success moving forward. You guys got a lot of things going on, and I just hope that maybe by just this simple podcast, someone will hear it and join you at a future event. You can find out more information about Converge and the other young adult groups of the diocese, as well as links about Jubilee Year 2025 in the description below this video. Or if you're listening to the audio-only version of this episode, you can find the links in the description below your podcast player. Thank you for joining the Courier's Jubilee 2025 Pilgrims of Hope podcast. The next episode comes out September 18th.